Welcome to the Invisible Wheelchair Podcast. This is Throwback Thursday. One Thursday each month, we take a trip back in time to a previous podcast. With so many new visitors to the podcast, I thought it was a good time to get back to some of the good stuff we've had from the past.
Today's podcast is sponsored by Q Sciences. Don and I discovered that the supplements we were taking and giving to our children were not being absorbed properly. I was very excited when I found Q Sciences. I was impressed with the quality of the products and that they provide maximum absorption. They have a variety of products, including a Q Max product, which is a combination of 3 products, including vitamins, minerals, and a probiotic. They also have hemp oil, a vitamin B12 spray, a sleep spray, and kids products. I've really seen a difference in how these products are improving how I feel, improving my mental health, and I'm happy with the quality of these products and how they're helping our whole family. If you'd like to learn more,
simply go to qsciences.focusedhealthyfamily.com. That's the letter Q, sciences.focusedhealthyfamily.com, or visit invisiblewheelchair.com and find out more information there.
and stop throwing your money away on supplements that don't work and use a quality product like Q Sciences.
So join me now as we travel back in time. This podcast was recorded on June 8th, 2018. This is podcast number 20 called What About the Others? In this podcast, I want to talk about the family dynamics around a family that has someone in it that suffers from anxiety disorders, whatever it might be. In my own case, it was OCD, and that's what really this kind of focuses on, is OCD and anxiety. But I want to talk about that family dynamics. What happens to the others in the family? Because as I always say when I talk to clients, and I think I've talked about it in podcasts, when one in the family or one in the community of family, whatever you want to call it, suffers from an anxiety disorder or even an illness for that matter, the others around him, the siblings and family, suffer also. And maybe not as hard as the person who is going through it, but hard enough and strong enough that it makes a huge difference. And in fact, I had actually found a couple of studies I found really interesting. The Department of Health and Human Services in 2015, they found in a study that 6.3 million teens suffer from anxiety. You know, and the Child Mind Institute that same year found that only about 20% of that age group get treatment. So the idea that kids and teens suffer anxiety is very true, especially nowadays. The fear factor is getting so high in the world, especially with kids, the peer pressure, the shooting, all of these kind of things happening, that it seems reasonable that there's a lot of kids that are on anxiety. And then taking it further, the Simmons Foundation for Autism did an initiative to be able to look at siblings of kids that have special needs. And I'm going to kind of paraphrase this, but what they found in it was that siblings, the children that have a brother or sister that suffer with special needs, anxiety disorders, show higher anxiety than other kids of that same age group. And if you add on any parental anxieties, then you really, bump it up a lot. So, I wanted to talk about some of the aspects or some of the things that happen with these siblings that are going through this. And I found this article. It's actually this post. It's an excerpt from a study guide which accompanied a seminar called Overcoming Depression-Anxiety, a Suffering Paradigm. And it's by a gentleman, this post is by a gentleman by the name of Brad Hambrick. And you can find out more about Brad Hambrick at bradhambrick.com, BradHambrick.com. And in it, he taught. It's actually called 12 Ways Depression-Anxiety Impact Family and Relationships. And so I read it and I thought it really hit very key on ones that I would have come up with. I may not have found all of these myself, even though they're all very true. I probably wouldn't have thought of it. So I thought it was a good guidepost for me to be able to use his 12 ways and be able to add in my own thoughts to them. So we're going to do just that, coming from this post by Brad Hambrick. And the first one, number one, is special rules. And I very much understand this. You know, when a family is dealing, especially with OCD, of all of them, I think it even hits worse, these special rules. We're doing things to compensate for them, to do compulsions for the OCD person, you know, to keep them quiet, to make sure they don't flare out or get triggered. We do things for them, you know, and the parents make rules, you know, don't be loud in the house because that'll trigger off the anxiety for this person, you know, or don't watch TV extra loud. You know, all these things. We put rules on the other kids of things to do so we can keep things kind of normal, so we don't get them, the person that has the anxiety, reared up, because that just means a long night. And trust me, I've been through those. So number two is resource monopoly. And here again, this one, I would have said very clearly because I saw it. You know, the person that suffers with special needs, anxiety disorders, really pulls your attention to them. I mean, not just pulls, but yanks almost sometimes. They don't outright like ask for it. They do it by the fact of, I'm going to destroy this thing if you don't pay attention to me, kind of thing. And so the others suffer from lack of attention from the parents because it's just being robbed. We were being robbed 24/7 of our attention with my daughter and had little to no time for the other kids. So I really understand that. It also can cost in the fact that, you know, when you're dealing with somebody a child who has special needs or has anxiety disorders, you're having a lot of times pump money into doctors and things that it becomes costly, and you can't work as much because you're getting called off constantly. And so the others can't buy or get some of the things they want because we just don't have the money this time. So it's very important to understand and try to pull away yourself to give attention to the other kids in there because it makes a big difference in them. Number three is confusion. And here again, you know, one of the big confusions, and he talks about in here, is the self-incriminating interpretations of your down mood as being their fault. In other words, the child sees you in an aggravated state or a down, depressed state and thinks about, what did I do? It's all my fault. Versus understanding that they're down because of their child that has this special needs, and you know we can't let them. You know we can't put them down. They're fussy. We got to hold. You know, so they're confused as to why all of this is happening. What is so bad? What they can see part of it, but they don't see all of it. Number four, anxiety. Well, that's kind of a given. That's why we're in this. Is because it does raise anxiety. You know, my oldest son was somewhat fearful of my daughter because she tended to take her anger and her abuse out on him, and many times unexpectedly. So he'd be always kind of on edge with what he did. So he always had anxiety, and I think it's because it's in the house, that alone puts it on others, and then on top of it, they just develop it out of their own fears and stuff. Um, Number 5 is guilt. And here there's guilt for the kids and there's also guilt for the parents. In the kids' case, they're wondering, what can I do to get mom happy again? Or what did I do that caused mom to get so angry? Even though, the parents getting angry at the other child or at the OCD or the ADHD, they don't realize that and they think that it's their fault and how can I correct it? How can I fix it? How can I help mom so she's not so sad about things? So, and guilt from the parent. Am I doing enough? Am I doing the right things? Am I doing the wrong things? Am I doing it too much? Am I doing it too little? All of these thoughts and fears go through your mind and you think, I don't ever want to see my child again because I'm afraid to face them because I feel so guilty of what I've done. And that I'm not helping them enough. So guilt, I don't do that. I still go up around my daughter and go, all that. Even during that time, I didn't. Try not to fall into these. Number 6, maladjustment. When you get into a household like we had that was always tense. I mean, there were so many times the tension was so thick you couldn't have cut it with a chainsaw, very honestly. And so you learn to adjust to that somewhat after so much time. You almost get tired of fighting it and you kind of adjust to it. So you can get maladjusted because that energy is not the best to base yourself on. And so over time you just become immune to it or accustomed to it. And it almost seems to become your norm in a way. All right, number 7, role reversals. And I saw this too. There were too many times that I put the information on my child that I wish things were going differently. I wish this and that was really unfair because it is not up to them to be the advice giver. It's not up to them to be the parent or the older person that gives wise things to the parent. The parents are supposed to be the one that hold it together, that do all of this. And so when the child becomes the parent, because the parent just can't take it any longer, which did happen in our household, I wouldn't say a tremendous amount of time, but many of the times. And my kids did a pretty good job of kind of stepping up to the plate. So, all right. Number 8, instability. Well, of course. Again, it's this idea when you live in something for so long, especially anxiety or anger, any of them really, but anxiety, at some point it becomes unstable. It's just you get tired of holding on to the walls before they crumble, and you let go, and then you're kind of left with, oh gosh, how do we keep going? How do we base our there's lives without those walls that were protecting us from the bullets that were flying or whatever. And so we have to find ways to soften that and to actually become the person we are. Medication. Here again, it's how to make a wise decision, when to do it, what to do. Should I really do this, or is there other possible extremes that I can take, natural extremes that I can take instead of medication? So we have used it ourselves, so I'm not against medication at all. But I want you to understand that a lot of times, especially with anxiety, that anxiety medicine doesn't necessarily work that well because it just doesn't show up. All right, so number 10, grief and loss. we think about, a lot of times I think one of the big problems with grief is we think about it only based around a funeral or a death. And that is not what grief is. I think that's what it was for a long time. Not that it wasn't something else, but there was just no speak of it any other way. But now, grief comes about in so many ways. The loss of a job, the loss of your home when you sell it, and the gaining of a new house, the loss of, well, of course, a death and all, but the loss of a life you once had. In other words, when you go through what you go through a lot of times with anxiety, it is a really dramatic change. The anxiety in our house changed our way of life. And then on top of that, for us, was my heart attack, which once again really changed it. We did 180-degree or 360-degree kind of turnarounds with stuff and changes and stuff. And those changes are a change in lifestyle. We see the death of an old lifestyle and the birth of a new lifestyle, but it still has some grief to it because it's just a change and it's out of our comfort zone. So it can play a big role in what we do and how we deal with it. And in the case of dealing with somebody with anxiety, it changes your life. It can change your family structure and dynamics dramatically. A lot of people can't get through it without a divorce. And so, luckily, my wife and I stuck through it and were able to make it through it, even though it was hard. And I can't emphasize that word hard enough, because it was one of the worst times in my life. It was a journey through hell with the OCD. And we suffered through it. Wasn't easy, wasn't good. Well, it was good once we got through it. And it was good for the lessons and the things we learned, which now help us to teach other families how to get through it. So that was probably one of the best things out of it, but still it was a major change. Number 11 is shame. Oh my gosh, yes. You feel, because there's such a stigma, one, around anxiety and mental disorders and mental health that still hangs on, and even, especially around depression. And so it feels very shameful that this is going on in your family and that you have to hide some things and not talk to people and do things that you normally would do. And so you really just fold up out of a group and you feel kind of shameful that you had to do that. So, and then number 12, finally, the spiritual crisis. I know of people, including myself, that question when things happen like that. When I had my heart attack, I questioned, what was that about? Why did I feel it necessary? So shame plays a huge role in how you feel about what happened. And then finally, number 12, spiritual crisis. I think a lot of people are getting away from churches, and I'm not, a proponent of churches necessarily, but there are people who are getting away from the church, and really this kind of situation tends to bring out a fear or hate of God, because why would you do this to me? It's unfair. But it really raises a lot of God questions or my spirituality questions, because it doesn't make sense a lot of times, especially when it happens to a young child that doesn't know what's going on. So there is a spiritual crisis of finding ourselves, finding a possible, place to go to for support, and it's something that needs to be addressed. All of these things, all 12 of these, really need to be addressed in your own life and how you deal with it. And the more you can chop out these, the better you're going to find your place with somebody. So once again, we come to the end of our time. I want to remind you to keep tapping, keep loving, and send me your comments. I would love to hear from them. And I hope you have a good day and keep tapping. It's fun to travel back in time and listen to past events and podcasts. Maybe you have a story from the past about how you overcame OCD. Or maybe you want to tell what you're going through right now dealing with OCD. We want to hear about it. Simply go to invisiblewheelchair.com, and on the left-hand side you'll see a little area that says Stories from the OCD Side. Click there and tell us all about it. We'll be happy to listen and put you out there. And remember, my wife and I are here to help you with your OCD and your anxiety. Simply go to familyocd.com or focusedhealthyfamily.com, and there you can connect with us and get a free consult to find out if we can help you. And thank you for visiting us today on the Invisible Wheelchair Podcast, and we'll look forward to your next visit with us. So thanks for coming. Take care.